with Atul Punj, the chairman and MD of Punj Llyod. Shireen, over to you.
Well, we're coming to you from Nagoya in Japan. This is the Chubu region. This is the manufacturing hub of Japan. And we're now selling the Make in India, or the government is selling the Make in India story here to investors. Joining us is Atul Punj of Punj Llyod. Thanks very much for joining us on CNBC TV 18. Since we're talking about Make in India, let me ask you about your own plans. You've got an inauguration coming up on the 4th of May of your plant in Malanpur. Take us through a little bit about the defense plans and specifically about the plant in Malanpur.
It's a pleasure to be here and effectively taking up from the Prime Minister's Make in India program. We picked up the challenge and we went ahead and actually tied up our first small arms FDI with Israel Weapon Industries, which is now getting into production on the 4th of May. So we'll be making the entire range of small arms. A lot of them are already in use with the special forces in India. And we're hoping now not only to manufacture for India, but also for export.
So this is a 49-51 joint venture. What kind of investments are we talking about?
The total investment on the project is currently standing at about 25 crores. And we expect that that should be sufficient for the next year when we go into phase 2.
Okay. Besides defense, what is, we were just hearing about business confidence in India, at least within the private sector, now being at a record high. What's your own sense and how are you planning to deal with the debt situation, which continues to plague a lot of Indian companies?
Well, I think the government is now finally working on a plan to really resolve the NPA issue with the banks once and for all. It's been something that's been festering for too long. It's like a slow bleed that's been in process. As industry, we've been lobbying the government to make various changes. A lot of them have been done. And we're now hoping for the final formulae to be finalized between the RBI and the DFS, the Department of Financial Services, on what exactly are the concessions.
What have you suggested? You said industry has been speaking to government about this. What are the main recommendations made?
Well, basically for the one-time restructuring that the construction sector has been asking for, we don't fall into the category of most other industries that have an asset that has a 25-year life. So a 525 kind of package is not relevant to the EPC sector. So we made some recommendations specifically around the work-in-progress model, which is really what our biggest asset is, finding a solution that works. So God willing, I think hopefully sooner rather than later, we don't know what the government is actually going to approve at the end of the day, but we've made a series of doable recommendations.
So the current debt for you is what, about 6,000 odd crores? What is the plan now to try and bring down debt further?
Well, I mean, every construction company is desperately trying to reduce its debt. And by getting rid of non-core assets, which is a lot of what we have done.
But you've done some of that already.
Yeah, so we've done a lot, we as a company have done a lot of it. At the same time, what we're trying to do is recover monies that have been stuck with customers for a long time.
How much would that be?
Oh, that for us is somewhere close to about 4,700 crores.
Okay. Any luck?
Amount. Moving slowly, a little slower than we expected, but as long as it's in the right direction, it's okay. So hopefully this too shall pass, as they say.
But in FY18, what's the hope in terms of being able to recover some of that?
I think FY18 we should have recovered, I would think, at least 50% of that.
50% of the 4,700 that's outstanding. Okay. What is it that you're now looking forward to? What is going to be the next big trigger in terms of growth for you particularly?
Well, I think as a company, we don't need any other triggers because the amount of investment going into infrastructure, which is our core business, is so massive that I don't think we should really divert our energies by looking at any other place other than defense. In defense, we're already playing tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 for various programs where we're working with the OFB, DRDO, HAL, etc. We hope to be able to deepen those relationships. And at the same time, we have some tier 1 aspirations, like in the small arms side, where we will be prime bidders as well, along with the modernization of some of the old systems that the government is, the defense forces are working with right now.
Are you happy with the pace of movement in the defense space?
I think we could have moved faster, but I think the general trend is in the right direction. The government is getting its head around exactly what needs to be done. And I think the realization the bureaucracy is now finally creeping in that the biggest stakeholder in private sector profitability is the government. Because 30+% of every dollar that we make actually goes to the government, and other than the indirect expenses. So once that kicks in terms of mindset change, that the government becomes an enabler rather than a regulator, okay, will really change this country. And I believe that's a work in progress that's starting to happen.
My final question, we just heard that CII survey talk about how business confidence is at an high. But are you feeling that way about FY18 as well?
I think a few significant events will really make a change in that whole
NPA resolution.
NPA resolution and collection of our monies that are stuck with the PSUs.
All right. Atul, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks very much for joining us on CNBC TV 18.